And here we go. Class notices. First of all, happy Foresight Friday. How's everybody doing? Okay, so who could tell me what happens tomorrow?
Shit gets real.
Nothing happens tomorrow. It's just a deadline of all the things that everyone has been doing up until this point, right? I mean, it's again, I'm not trying to downplay it. Yet the build up, the notices, everything that's coming out makes it a little more tense than probably it needs to be, particularly for this group of people. I mean, what we have been doing for 90 days plus days is preparing for the changes and everything that comes up until this point. So as far as tomorrow, it's already happened in our MLS. Our forms are already uploaded. The only thing that we really have moving forward are some checks and balances for us to make sure that we're complying to the settlement, because after tomorrow, that's when, if we're not complying to it, we would be in violation of the settlement. So a couple housekeeping items, and then we're going to jump into the topic. So a couple things, obviously, as of tomorrow, the new forms absolutely have to be used. Those are the only forms options that you have. So most of you have moved to it. Point of clarification, any active, I would say pending buyers or sellers at this point, you don't need an updated form, but you absolutely moving forward need to be using the most recent form. One thing that we are going to be doing, it's not happening as quickly as possible, but the area that I think is probably where we are going to be the most vulnerable is the required written agreement for showing properties. That does start tomorrow. That is something that I'm sure all of you definitely have been doing since the beginning of real estate, and especially now with these changes being talked about. But in case you haven't, as of tomorrow, it is absolute requirement that a buyer have a written agreement with you prior to going into a property. We are going to have some measures in place that will help you in that, as far as from a compliance and accountability, where we will follow up with you on showings just to make sure that all of those written agreements do need to be uploaded just as they have at this point, even if you do not submit offers or go under contract with those buyers. So that's just something to keep in mind. Any questions, any general questions about anything that's happening tomorrow? I'll zoom out if we get too granular, because I do want to talk about today's topic, but any general questions about tomorrow or this deadline? All right. Well, we'll get back to questions at the end. Don't worry. So, really quickly, because they're both right in front of me right now. First of all, I'd be remiss to not absolutely thank Lisa Haran for her tireless teaching of the changes of the forms. I'm a forms nerd, and I like teaching forms. I don't know that I would have been able to survive as many times as that this wonderful woman has gone through these form changes. So if you see Lisa, give her a big hug and then a big margarita, because she has earned it over the last 90 days. So I'm so thankful for that. And then Delisha, for you driving this Wednesday conversations class that we started last week and are going to continue next week. This has been great because it's a great marrying of the two. It's the mechanics and the fundamentals of the change, and then how to talk about them. So for those of you who don't know, next Wednesday at 1 is where we're having the next conversations blueprint, which will be specifically on talking through the listing agreement. All right, so here's what we're talking about today. And really, this is a general discussion, just so you guys aren't surprised if this comes up. One of the things that will happen tomorrow, and actually has already happened for the other settlements, are what are called settlement notices or class notices. And what happens when there's a class action suit that is then settled, or where there's a verdict, is that a notice will go out to all of the members of the class. So this has actually already happened twice. So some of you may have already had a consumer ask you about it. Some of you may even receive notice on it, because you would technically fall into the class even though you were an agent. And what this is this basically is a notice that goes out to all the eligible class members. And those are going to be based on a couple of different things. The main things are going to be, number one, did you sell a home? Number two, did you sell that home within a certain period of time? The third one would be, did you sell that home using a multiple listing service? And then the fourth one would be, did you sell that home using a brokerage? So far, the ones you heard about would be the fourth one, which were homes that were sold specifically with certain brokerages. And the list on that is let me make sure I have that list correct, is the Anywhere, Remax, KW, Compass, Realty One, Ingalls and Vokers, Redfin. I think those are the only ones that would apply here. So basically, what this means is earlier this year, when those settlements were announced and there was a deadline for those to happen, um, those notices were sent out. Has anybody had anyone contact them? Okay. Yeah, again, this may not be a conversation, right? And that's what this a big conversation, but that's the purpose of these continued Friday conversations is so if you do have a consumer come to you, you're not caught off guard. What will happen tomorrow, though, is there is more than likely there are probably mail houses right now that have boxes of thing notices that they're about to bring to the post office tomorrow. And some of it will go electronically. Now, this isn't ominous. This isn't something huge, but basically, what it will be is it will go out to the next wave of potential class members that could partake in the settlement. And basically, all it does is if you sold a house under these parameters within this time frame, contact us or go to this website and it'll tell you the rights of this. And it basically tells them, what sort of rights they have in it, if there's any sort of compensation, how they can opt in, if they need to opt out. And the purpose of us knowing this is not necessarily to have the answers. Actually, if anything, it should not be you having all the answers. It's really for you to be able to chat about it. Should a consumer, a neighbor, a person in your database just come to you and say, hey, what does this notice say? We did see a couple that went out for the Keller Williams one because it said, did you sell your home with Keller Williams? You may be entitled to, you may, in capital, bold, italics, be entitled to compensation. And all that is if you qualify, you will get a portion of this settlement. And that'll be based on numerous different things. Any questions about that? Okay. This isn't intended, again, to be a huge conversation as much as anything. I do want to share with you, though, if you go to the website, because this is where you should actually guide your consumers, and I'll email this out. But if you go to the website, you go to this website now, it's realestatecommissionlitigation.com. And this basically shows the big three settlements. This is the Anyway Remax one that was earlier this year. Shortly thereafter, there was one with another group, and then the NAR one that came shortly after that. And this is where you honestly want to guide any consumers. Say, if you want to get more information, go there. And then when they go there, honestly, what it does is it just gives a general breakdown of what their rights and options are. And again, I'm showing you this for context. This is not something that you want to study and learn. You don't want to become the expert on this. You just want to be able to be the person who's knowledgeable enough on it to guide the consumer in the right direction. So with that, you want to here's what it is: how they submit a complaint. Submit a claim. If they want to be excluded, if they want to object and think that they should get more, or if they want to go to the hearing, which obviously on this one they've missed all the deadlines because it was earlier, but the same thing will come out tomorrow, or they do nothing. And the reason that they would be excluded is if some people may want to say, I don't, if there is a consumer out there that feels that they were damaged more than what the settlement could give them, they would want to be excluded from the settlement because then they want to then go to try to pursue legal action in a non-class action settlement or class action suit. So that's it. That was the purpose of today, was just because this is going to go out. You will more than likely see some stuff posted on it. So the purpose of it is just for you to be comfortable with it, right? And understand that this might happen. Don't freak out. Just answer the questions of your consumer and then guide them to the website, if it even comes up. Okay. Questions? That means it's all covered. All right. We can open up to general questions. So AJ had the question in the chat box. He said, does your buyer agency or written agreement have to be uploaded into Command before you can show property? No, not before. I mean, you signing it is when you go tour the property, but it does need to be uploaded shortly thereafter as part of state law compliance. But no, you don't need to have it uploaded and approved in Command to go tour property. Okay. Other questions? Kept this one short. That's the purpose of these. That makes it easy. So aside from class settlements, any other questions that you guys have? You guys are like, no, we're good. Will buyer agents call to ask for commission? Of course. Yeah. I mean, let's talk. We can shift this back to a little bit of a discussion of the commissions. Yeah. We're still working this out. Buyers agents will more than likely call and ask for commission. I mean, they're really asking to see if you are paying the cooperative compensation. Last week's discussion on compensation versus concessions, I highly encourage you to go and watch that. That gives a lot of clarity on this. But buyers agents will be reaching out to say, Patty, are you offering a cooperative compensation? And Patty either is or is not. It's not a, she either is in her listing agreement saying I'm going to give X% to the buyer's agent, or she is not. That part is not negotiable. I mean, well, Patty, I guess technically could say it's negotiable for me, but she's more than likely already agreed on that number with her seller.
Right.
So when they call and ask that, that's not something you have to. This is a misconception that's happening quite a bit. Is that's not something you have to push out to be negotiated on in the contract. Like if you've already got that agreement with your seller, get that out of the way. Like go ahead and get that conversation out of the way to go in there. A compensation agreement, and here's a couple. We may go over, this might be a good opportunity to go over a couple of things that have come up this week. A compensation agreement is not required to show a property, but there's no reason that you shouldn't sign one if you're offering it when a buyer's agent sends it to you. Now, if you don't get to it or you're busy, that I understand. But we've had some misunderstandings to say, well, I've been told not to sign this until negotiations start. That's not how that works. If your seller and you have already come up to an agreement of how much you're offering to the buyer's agent or how much they are. Okay. What else has come up, Lisa, this week that would be good to cover? Oh, transaction. Yeah, that was just a glitch in the system. Lissandro asked about the requirements of the transaction agreement as well as the buyer agency compensation agreement. That was a glitch in the system. That's on us. That's not on the compliance team. We told them that it was just a glitch on what we were making required versus a conditional requirement.
We fixed that though. It's either or.
It was not. Yeah, it wasn't fixed until yesterday. There was a delay in it getting repaired. So yeah. Yep. Okay. Anything else?
I've been asked this one question a lot. Why can't I send the compensation agreement with the contract?
You can. Here's the challenge. If you're not getting these required, or you're not getting the commission that equals what you have in your buyer agency agreement, then your buyer doesn't know how much they're going to have to cover. So if you've got 3% as an example in your buyer agency agreement, and they're offering out 2.5, and you've agreed to cover the difference, the buyers agree to cover the difference, and you don't know how much they're offering out, and they say they're only offering 1, then now all of a sudden your buyer's got a lot more of a delta to cover, and they want to maybe negotiate the concessions differently. So I understand that, but that goes back to the discussion from last week of the difference between concessions and compensation. What's happening, and this is the crux of the entire problem, is everyone is now lumping everything in concessions. So if Patty already has an agreement that she's paying X%, and I know as a buyer's agent that she's going to pay me X%, we've got a compensation agreement signed. That X% is coming from her as the listing agent, or even if it's coming from her seller as the seller, that X% is not a buyer concession. That X% is compensation being paid by either Patty as the agent or the seller directly. Anything that's then negotiated as concessions, regardless of how much of that goes to compensation, that's the concession. Concession is the money from the seller to the buyer. Compensation is the money from the client to the agent. So. What else? All right. That was it. Short and sweet. We'll keep the topics timely. Make sure we update it. If you have questions, you don't have to wait to these. Please reach out to me or Lisa or anybody on the leadership team. We're doing everything we can to keep up with it. I will tell you, being at Mega Camp this week was very encouraging because this was not something people shied away from. It was mentioned quite a bit. which is good because I think it's a little naive to be a little bit Pollyanna and not say, oh, there's not going to be a big deal, because it is. But we saw a lot of agents that have already embraced a lot of these changes and are crushing it this year and having a great year. So the question is from Pam on the offer to purchase: how is concessions different from the seller paid closing costs? They're not. Concessions is a general national term that was used in the settlement. So concessions, seller paid closing costs, those are pretty much the same thing. Now that might be, Pam, that might be identified a little bit differently in the North Carolina contract, but I'm almost sure it's not, because they're not talking about compensation in the North Carolina contract at all. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, thanks for being here. If you have any questions, appreciate it. Have a great Friday. Take a deep breath. Use August 17th as your day to just just what is it? Decompress? No. Disconnect. Disconnect. Take the day off. Enjoy it. Wake up Monday and hit the ground running. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Interesting.